Good evening. Thank you for coming. My name is Caroline Jean Fernald. I am the Executive Director of Harvard Museums of Science and Culture, a partnership of museums where our mission is to foster curiosity and a spirit of discovery in visitors of all ages, enhancing public understanding of and appreciation for the natural world, science, and human cultures. With this mission in mind, I am delighted to welcome our in-person as well as our Zoom audience to tonight's lecture, co-sponsored by the Harvard Museum of the Ancient Near East and the Harvard Museum of Science and Culture. I would also like to extend a special note of gratitude to our members and donors whose support help make events like tonight's lecture possible. We are honored to have Dr. Christian Leitz from the University of Tübingen with us tonight, who will discuss a fascinating restoration project at the Temple of Esna in Egypt. To learn more about upcoming museum events, I invite you to visit our website, hmsc.harvard.edu. We have several educational and fun program opportunities for adults, teens, and children, as well as a wide array of upcoming lectures and events. We have a lecture this Saturday at 2 on the evolution of cats as part of our Evolution Matters lecture series. Cats are very important, Peter. We are also proud to host for the second year Celebremos, a family-friendly event celebrating the cultures and communities of El Salvador, which will be held at the Peabody Museum this Sunday from 1 to 4. Many more events can be found on our website, where you can sign up for our newsletter to stay in the loop on all the good times we have here at HMSC. I will now turn it over to Peter Dermanuelian, Barbara Bell Professor of Egyptology and Director of the Harvard Museum of the Ancient Near East, who will introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Caroline. Delighted to see all of you, and those I can't see who are online, welcome to all of you as well. It always feels great to start off our Egyptological lecture series. This is the first of 3 talks that we'll have this semester. The other is in mid-October, and a third one in mid-November. And that's a great lineup. So be watching your inboxes and the HMSC website and the HMain website for announcements about that. Tonight's speaker is also a special treat for us. Dr. Christian Leitz studied Egyptology, Assyriology, and Coptology at the Universities of Marburg and Göttingen, and received his PhD from Göttingen in 1989. In 1993, he did his Habilitation at the University of Cologne, where he also held a Heisenberg Scholarship from the German Research Foundation from 93 to 98. From 1999 to 2003, he led the project Lexicon of Egyptian Gods and Names of Gods, the original German name, of course, at the Seminar for Egyptology in Cologne. I have to add that the product was 8 magisterial volumes that are absolutely indispensable, and they are sagging my bookshelf even as we speak right now. I love them. Since 2004, Dr. Leitz has been a full professor of Egyptology at the University of Tübingen. This is a beautiful university town in the south of Germany. I was very lucky to spend a fellowship year there once, and one of the most enjoyable Egyptological years of my life. So a great place to visit if you haven't seen it. That was all, of course, before he took over, that I spent my time there. He's also taught as a visiting professor at the École Pratique des Hautes Études at the Collège de France, both in Paris and at Cairo University. His most important current research work is the Athribis project. And the goal here is to fully research, preserve, and publish the written records, material technologies, and architectural history of the large temple in the ancient city of Athribis. It's dedicated to the god Min-Re, his wife Repit, and their son, the child god Colanthes. The site's near the modern Middle Egyptian city of Sohag. But tonight, he'll talk to us about the magnificent restoration work that's gone on in Esna Temple and all the new information we've gained from the scenes, the colors, and inscriptions that have almost magically reappeared in this tremendous conservation effort. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Christian Leitz.
Okay, thank you, Peter, for this very nice introduction. Okay, Peter was speaking about the temple of Esna, but this is a big word. Actually, what you have in Esna is simply the pronaos. And after the Egyptians made some excavation behind the temple before 2 or 3 years, it is also quite clear that behind there is more or less nothing, and probably there was not very much. If you see reconstructions by Dieter Arnold also, where there were ambulatory or so with columns and everything around the temple. Probably this is not true. And actually, it was a very small temple with a Ptolemaic facade founded under Ptolemy VI. And then in the early Roman times, they decided to build before this Ptolemaic facade a large pronaos, about which I will speak today. The decoration started of the greatest part in the early Roman period and up to the 3rd century AD. And the temple was, there's also a big chance that the only chance why it was preserved, that it served as a cotton storage facility during the 19th century. There were, at the time of the of the expedition of Napoleon to Egypt, there were 2 other temples in Esna which are completely destroyed, and only that they could use this large building inside the city, which is 9 meters down to the normal level of today. This helped that everything could be done. We started in 2018 as the University of Tübingen in cooperation with the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities, now Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities. We launched a project with the documentation center of the ministry under the direction of my partner Hisham El-Lissi to document the temple decoration. Its main objectives are twofold. First, it aims to continue the cleaning and the conservation work, which started by the Department of Conservation some 10 years before, but stopped soon afterwards. And when we started before 6 years, all activities are carried out by a team of Egyptian conservators led by Ahmed Imam, who joined the Esna team upon a suggestion of the late Ramadan Badri Hussein, after having before working for him at Saqqara. In order that you can imagine the situation before and after conservation work, I let you see some photos which are showing what was the situation at the beginning and how the situation is later after several weeks or partly months of hard work. All the capitals of the 18 inner columns were particularly colorful in antiquity, but became dark and brown during the many centuries after the closing of the cult of the temple and the subsequent habitation by the citizens of Esna. Open fire more than 1,500 years resulted in a big layer of soot which covered all the walls of the pronaos, but actually it was quite good since the soot had also very conservative results. Nothing was destroyed. In the photo, you see column 5 in the southern part of the temple after cleaning in the first part of 2022. At the beginning of this year, it had the same color as the 2 ceilings D and E above. The shafts of each column are covered in the second register by normally 28 columns of text. Here you see the situation on column 5 during the conservation process. The soot on the upper and left part has already gone. The lower part in the middle is still full of black soot and you can barely see any colors. Here you see the same situation on another part of column 5. I should mention that the reliefs are only cleaned and in no case repainted. The result of now 6 years' work have been highly promising, as the complete and original coloration is now visible again in many parts. Actually, we have finished the whole ceilings and all the 18 inner columns. Another striking example, are the lower sides of the architraves, which were in most cases only painted and not carved in reliefs. For this reason, they are missing in the standard edition of Serge-Sonneron. He couldn't simply see the inscription. Here you see one part of architrave C during the conservation process. One line has already undergone a first treatment, and parts of the suit has gone, but the hieroglyphs are barely visible. You can't see anything in this part. Try to focus on this group mess marked by the red flash, and in order that you recognize the same sign in the next photo. Here, some weeks later. The sign below mess, it's very easy to read. Who is born every day, who spends the night. And the column to the left reveals the daughter of Ra, and Tefnut, this is a lion goddess, the very great who gives birth. If I go back one slide for a moment, try to see anything. It's more or less impossible. Another important part of the work of the conservators is the installations of spikes on the top of the columns as protection against the numerous pigeons which are inhabiting the temple and breeding upon the columns on the capitals of the columns. The spikes will not bring all birds outside. This is impossible in a country like Egypt. But we can reduce it by 90%, and this would be also a great achievement. From the ground, the spikes, which are dyed brownish, are not visible, but as you can see here, they are preventing the stay of all birds. Above them, a newly restored inscriptions on one of the abaci, die Hech en Hebus, in English, who gives 1 million of feasts and 100,000 of years. The frog is a number for 100,000. The second objective of the project is a full photographic documentation of the current state of preservation undertaken in cooperation with the Documentation Center of the Ministry. In the long term, we intend to publish plate volumes of the entire decoration of the pronaos in order to set them near the 5 already published text volumes of the Serge-Sonneron. This was the director of the French Institute who died by a car accident a bit before he was 50, and he could not finish his work. But at that time, also color photos would be impossible. And if he would have published the photos, it should be in any case redone, but you would have seen more or less nothing on that photos. Before I start the presentation of the 6 travées or bands or ceilings, which are now completely restored, I would like to show you some other parts of the temple in order that you get an imagination of the stunning work of Ahmed Imam and his team. By the way, we are working with about 30 conservators, and we are working about 7 to 8 months. I am not present all the time. Of course, they don't need me. I'm Egyptologist, but the conservators are working 7 to 8 months, which is a very long period in Egypt. Here you see a part of the frieze of column 4. In the cartouche, you see the name, or you had to believe me that it is Heka, the child, the firstborn of Chnum, the lord of the field. And the god Chnum is sitting on the left side, easily recognizable by his ram head. In the next slide, you see the southern architrave of the central travée. The photo was taken by Ahmed Amin in November 21. Look to the owl and to the lion marked by the red flash. And then I will show you in the next slide the situation some months later. when all the rest has been cleared from this black and brownish suit. No? The architrave is finished, as well as the complete ceiling with 46 vultures. No? Half of them with the head of a vulture, representing the goddess Nekhbet from El Kab in Upper Egypt, and half of these vultures have the head of a cobra, representing the goddess Wajet from Buto in Lower Egypt. On this photo, you see a recent photo of the northern part of the pronaos, which is completely restored as regards the columns with their capitals and abatis, the architraves with their lower sides, as well as the ceilings. The walls will follow later, but actually we have started already with the southern inner wall in the moment. No? And we will go in 2 weeks to Esna to make the photographic documentation. Now, Sonneron numbered the ceilings or bays or travées with, from north to south with capitals from A to F. They were separated in the middle by the central travée, which has already been approximately the double surface as the other travées, and is decorated by this already mentioned 46 flying vultures. I will give you now an overview of all 6 travées or bands where the conservation work is completed. All bands showing the night sky, but with different aspects. The main focus of the first travée A is the moon, but there are also depicted 2 solar barks, a considerable number of unknown Egyptian constellations, and 2 representations of the east or rather north wind. Let us start with the moon. On the right side of the solar bark are depicted the first 7 gods of the waxing moon. Each one holds a sign of life in his right hand and is standing on a circle. In the circle, parts of the Ujjad eye are painted. The Ujjad eye, the complete Ujjad eye means the full moon. In the first circle, there is nothing to see, since the circle represents the first day of the lunar month, the day of the new moon, where the moon is invisible. In front of the crown of each deity is a rectangle with painted inscriptions, which were for the largest part not visible in the time of Sonneron. After conservation, it was in many cases possible to read the ink inscriptions, as here Montu, the god Montu. In the case of the deities of the waxing moon, this does not reveal great secrets, since there are parallels in other temples with readable inscriptions. If we follow the row of the deities to the right, you can see the filling of the Ujjad eye until full moon, when the eye is complete. The row of the deities of the waning moon begins at the eastern side of the northern part of this travée. The first one is Thoth, as a seated ibis-headed god, presenting the Ujjad eye as a symbol of full moon. He is followed by the god Min, and then comes Osiris, and then the 4 sons of Horus, that means Amseti, Hapi, Duamutef, and Kebersenuef. Each one is holding an sign, a sign of life. No? You see that the part of the Ujjad eye which is missing in each circle is growing from right to left. If we go to the last deities of the waning moon, you discover a changing attitude. No? Only the first 2 have a sign of life in their hand, and the last 2 ones are depicted in a mummiform shape. Since there are much less parallels for the deities of the waning moon, it is not clear which deity was omitted, but one can be quite sure that the last 2 figures are standing for the 29th and the 30th day of the lunar month. The circles beneath these two gods are empty. No part of the wretched eye is visible. This corresponds with astronomical reality. On the 30th Egyptian lunar day, the moon is in no case to see. Approximately every second lunar month in ancient Egypt did not even have a 30th lunar day, but the month ended already with day 29. This has as a consequence that in half of the cases the moon was even on day 29 not to see. In the other months, the last crescent was to see a bit before sunrise, and the month had 30 days. A very peculiar figure, which has nevertheless a parallel in the hypostyle of the Isis temple at Philae, is this strange bird. Perhaps a goose with the back of a snake in form of a cobra, and its tail in form of another serpent. Over its head, the conservators discovered an inscription in red ink. In this photo, it might be a bit difficult or even more difficult to see anything. But nowadays, there are very clever computer programs like dstretch, which are helpful in reading such faded inscriptions. Here you see the dstretch image, no? And the signs are clear. And if you had made Egyptian courses with Peter, you would be able to read it as Sebek, the morning star of the sky. The inscription here is retrograde, which means that the correct reading should be in verse, the morning god of the sky, Sebek. Sebek is the designation of the planet Mercury, which can be seen in the morning as well as in the evening. And the morning star fits with the position of the planet in the eastern part of Trave A. To the right of Mercury, there is depicted an unknown constellation in form of a double protomb of a goat. Thanks to the conservation work, we are now able to read the name of this constellation, which is written in red ink before the left head of the goat, again in retrograde script. Quite clear now. You see here the dstretch image. No? The name is easily readable. It should be, if the woman as a feminine determinative is correct, Sekhmet Weret, the great powerful. This is of course not enough to localize the constellation precisely at the sky, but at least we have now the name, which was before completely unknown and is only attested here as a name of a constellation. No? Due to its position in the southern half of the ceiling, it should be a constellation of the southern sky. Another constellation of the southern sky is this snake with two heads, one functioning as a tail. Over the snake, a clearly visible inscription is to be seen, which we can read 80 cubits. No? This is a bit more than 40 meters. No? This constellation is also unknown outside of Esna, but there are similar texts and representations in the still unpublished tomb of Ufaa at Abu Sir. Abu Sir is a bit north of Saqqara, let's say roughly between Saqqara and Giza, no? So a bit south of Cairo, modern Cairo. Another unknown constellation consists of a human-headed sphinx with a tail in form of a crocodile. After conservation, faded traces of a red ink inscription became visible, which reads Sebek Wer, Sobek the Great is his name. Apparently, the deity was named after its tail. No? Bit strange, but... The next constellation, which is located to the northern part of the ceiling, shows two Aries-like goddesses. That means with the body of an hippopotamus, but the head and tail of a crocodile. The names are written in small rectangles above their heads. It is in both cases the same Ipet, this means the hippopotamus goddess. The determinative of the animal skin is quite well visible in the dstretch version, for those who are familiar with hieroglyphs. The position of this constellation was deliberately chosen directly beneath the mentioning of the same hippopotamus goddess in the middle line, which separates the two halves of the ceiling. In this text, the subject is the myth of the hippopotamus goddess, which prevents Seth, in his form as a foreleg of a bull, that is the Big Dipper, to enter the netherworld, a subject to which I will return later when we are dealing with Trave B. The next photo shows a snake with 4 heads. 2 are human and 2 are that of birds, or more precisely that of geese. The 4 legs on the left side were those of humans, the other 4 legs on the right side, those of geese. The names are nearly completely readable, only 1 square on the left is lost. No? The ink inscription over the head of the geese is very clear. Again, the script is retrograde, the 2 geese of Ra. So this means the sun god. Again, a constellation which is only attested in Esna. The last photo from Trave A shows the beautiful wind of the east. So this, according to this ink inscriptions, this is a scarab with 4 wings, the head of a ram, and an ostrich feather on his head. The name is written in a rectangle to the right of his head. At the right corner, there is a cobra sitting on a bundle of papyrus plants. And again, after conservation, the name is easy, readable, the Great Flame. It is now time to move to Trave B. Here you see 35 barks with different deities and 1 constellation on the right side. 34 of these 35 barks contain deacons. I will explain in a moment what are these deacons and what is their function. In the last bark of the southeast side, the 2 main constellations of ancient Egypt are depicted, Orion and Sotis. Let us start with the deacons. Deacons are known in ancient Egypt from the coffins of the Middle Kingdom onwards. You find them in the tombs of the kings of the New Kingdom, on late period stone sarcophagi, as well as in Greco-Roman temples. Deacons served as a star clock to measure the 12 hours of the night. Since every star appears in the same position from one night to the other, a bit less than 4 minutes earlier, every hour measured by a star lasted about 40 minutes, under the condition that this was indicating the same hour for a period of exactly 10 days. 10 is in Greek deca. This is the origin of the name deacons. Theoretically, one can choose every position of a star to use it in such a star clock. Its rising, its setting, or its culmination. This means the highest position in the south. As you can imagine, Egyptologists are not agreeing which position they were using. This is normal, this is in every science, so there are also some battles, always. But for our purpose, this is not of, it has no importance. Instead, I will speak about some difficulties which arise by using such a star clock. The first one is obvious. Since 12 hours of each 40 minutes will result in about 8 hours of 60 minutes, there is a considerable part of the night which is not measured by this clock. In Lower Egypt, you have a winter-summer ratio of about, in winter, a ratio of about 14 to 10 hours, night versus day. In Upper Egypt, it's a bit better, 13.5 to 10.5. In summer, it is of course better in Lower Egypt, 10 hours at night. In Upper Egypt, about 10.5 hours. Just focusing on winter, we have in Lower Egypt about 6 hours of the night, which couldn't be measured by such a star clock, which is a quite disastrous result. The next difficulty you see on the photo. the first decan consists of 3 stars, the next one of 12 stars, and the following one of just 1 star, something which is quite rare. Normally, the decans are composed always of several stars. Which star is relevant to use it in the star clock? The Egyptians had potentially had to choose between a brighter star, whose position does not fit very well, and fainter stars, which potentially better fitting positions, which had just the disadvantage of being not so easily recognizable. In conclusion, such a star clock could not be very precise. In the southeast of this trave, you see in the first mark Osiris and Seshat. Osiris is a form of Orion, Egyptian. The Egyptian name is in this blue circle, no? Which separates the 2 halves of the ceiling. The iconography of Sotis might, as the goddess Seshat, might be a mistake. The inscription before her head is clearly Sotis Isis, which is very common in a lot of other sources. Orion turns his head back towards his companion Sotis, and there are several texts that Sotis is behind Orion or acting as his protection. What does this mean astronomically? Sotis is Sirius, the brightest star of the sky. Sah means it in Egyptian toe and designates the star Beta Orionis, or Rigel, which means leg in Arabic. What you see here is a simulation of the sky over Esna for the year 100 AD with the help of the program Stellarium. I took the night of August 26, but this is not important. I could have chosen also a date 1 month later or earlier. I underlaid an azimut grid of which means that at exactly 90 degrees in the east, 90 degrees is the east, which is marked by a O. I'm sorry for the O, but this is in German Osten. No? Osten means east. No? The green line is the horizon. No? All stars which are below the green line are still under the horizon and not visible. You see the star Rigel in the moment of its rising. It had just become visible over the horizon. Please have also a look to the position of the rising near the 105 degree line. This means about 15 degrees to the southeast. In the next slide, I will show you a situation 1 hour 45 minutes later. Here you see the situation at the moment of the rising of Sotis. She appears not exactly at the same position of Rigel, but quite close. She is between 105 and 110 degrees, 3 or 4 degrees more to the south as Rigel. In other words, she is following Rigel in more or less the same course, and this is the reason why Orion turns his head back to see his companion Sotis Isis, who will follow him the whole night until his setting in the west. In the northeast, the other well-known and safely identified constellation is depicted. It is Mesech Tiu, the foreleg of a bull, which is surely identical with the 7 stars of the Big Dipper, which is a part of the constellation Ursa Major, the Great Bear. This constellation was at origin a circumpolar constellation, which means that the 7 stars were so close to the polar star that they were never setting. This means they could never reach a position under the horizon. Mesech Tiu was identified in Egyptian mythology with Seth, the brother of Osiris, who murdered him and tried later to harm also the mummified Osiris as ruler of the netherworld. The position of stars are changing very slowly, but over the centuries you see the effect. During Egyptian history, some stars of Mesech Tiu gained a longer distance from the polar star, which results in the effect that these stars could set for some hours, especially in Upper Egypt. At some moment during the New Kingdom, the priests created a new myth of the hippopotamus, which prevented with a chain, Mesertiu, from entering to the netherworld, or more precisely, this stellar goddess prevented Mesertiu to enter too far into the netherworld. What does this mean exactly astronomically? To demonstrate this, I used again the program Stellarium for Esna in the year 100 AD, August 25. The first picture shows the situation at 10:31 p.m. All the stars of the Big Dipper are above the horizon, but some of them are already very near to the horizon. Please focus now on the timetable and the position of the 7 stars above or below the green horizontal line. I think everybody sees the 7 stars, no? So let's see. This is the situation 1 hour later at 11:33 p.m. One of the 7 stars is already under the horizontal line, which is a potential danger for Osiris. 1 hour later, on the next day at 0:33 a.m., the situation is more dangerous. The last of the 7 stars with the name Al-Qaid is several degrees below the horizon. At 1:33 a.m., Al-Qaid has moved deeper into the netherworld. Only 3 hours later, at 4:33 a.m., the situation has improved. 6 of the 7 stars are quite far over the horizon, and the last one, Al-Qaid, is shortly before rising. The identification of the constellation of the hippopotamus goddess is, however, unclear. One cannot even be sure if this constellation has to be located west of the Big Dipper, that means in the region about Ursa Major, or east of it. There are several proposals, but without new material, all these proposals are difficult to prove. No? We will leave now Trave B and move to Trave C. As all these ceilings, with the exception of the last one, it is divided in a northern and southern half. The journey of the sun begins in the southeast corner and follows then the path of the sun to the west and back during night in the northern part. We will do the same. So we start with the newborn sun god in the east. Some of these inscriptions were cut in relief and visible at the time of Sonoron. Others were just painted and only partly or not at all visible at that time. Here you see the newly born sun god as a child sitting upon his throne, but now after conservation we knew also the name of the falcon-headed god at the stern of the bark. His name is Horus, Henti and Irti. To the left follow the next scene. 6 rahit birds or lapwings are praising the reborn sun in its bark, whose left part is visible on the right side of the photo. You have just seen in the photo this before. A big progress is to be seen with the next scene, which shows the first 6 hours of the day. Sonoron was only speaking about 6 female persons whose names were not carved, but now after conservation, all the names are painted in red ink and easily readable. At the right, you see the goddess of the 6th hour of the day. This is this lady here. She looks towards the sun god at noon. He is depicted as the local god Chnum, sitting at his potter's wheel. Chnum is venerated in Esna quite often as a sun god in the form Chnum Ra. We are moving further to the west. At the right, you see the goddess of the 12th hour of the day, and left to her is a bark with the old sun god bent on his stick. And at the very end, the bark with the old sun god is received at the west of the Trave by 3 jackal-headed deities. And you see always some inscriptions are carved, but some are new and just painted. So overall, we got about nearly 200 inscriptions out on the ceiling. Mostly of them just giving us a name, but 200 is something. And nobody, including myself, would have expected that we will have these kind of results. The next scene is quite large. It shows the bark with Osiris sitting in a circle, which is in all probability the disk of the moon. At the prow of the bark are standing 3 mummified gods. Over the heads is now a painted but nevertheless quite faded ink inscriptions to see. A possible reading is the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, the king of the netherworld, who will rejuvenate, the ruler of the necropolis, the Lord. Far to the right, nearly to the east end of the ceiling, is the bark with the scarab, the morning god of the morning form of the sun god. At the left edge, you see the 2 hours of the night. The scarab itself is, after the successful conservation, a masterpiece of Egyptian art. And as you can see here in this beautiful photo from Ahmed Amin. And the last group of this trave are 4 baboons, which are greeting the newborn sun in the same way as the rechid birds, as the lapwing birds did in the southern half of the ceiling. We can now turn to the southern part of the astronomical ceiling in Esna. In the northern half of trave D are 2 processions of 22 deities, each moving to the wedged eye, that means the full moon. The first 15 of each procession are the gods of the waxing and the waning moon. The 7 others are local deities. The procession to the right, which moves from west to east, are the deities of the waxing moon, since the waxing moon is first to be seen in the west and moves later further to the east. The other procession are the deities of the waning moon until his disappearance in the east. In this photo, you see some deities of the waxing moon before conservation, and in the following after conservation, where their names in the small rectangles before the head are clearly readable, for example, Sobek as the name of the crocodile-headed god. The southern part is quite similar to the decoration of trave C. It deals with the daily course of the sun. Here you see the first scene of the east. The newborn sun god is sitting above a scarab, which is also a representation of the sun god in the morning. And this was the situation as you could see it when you were before 3 or 4 years in Esna. And now you see it here. And I think everybody will agree that after conservation, the scene is a bit more attractive. To the right and the left of the winged scarab are standing Isis and Nephthys, greeting the sun god in the moment of its rising. The next band is trave E. In the eastern part, the main subject is the zodiac. And in the western part, as in trave B, the deacons, but here are only 18 of the 36 deacons represented. In between are 6 of the 7 so-called arrows, whose astronomical function is not clear. On the east and the west are 2 depictions of the sky goddess Nun. In this picture, you see from right to left deacons number 26 to 28 and the so-called pseudo-deacon. This means a deity which follows each group of 3 deacons. This is here the god with the lion head. Over the heads of the deacons are rectangles which reveal now after conservation their names, which were not carved but only painted in black ink. There can be given reasons why exactly these 18 deacons were chosen, but this is a little bit difficult to explain in this context, so we will proceed with the zodiac. Before 2023, all representations of the zodiac were seen in this form. covered by the soot of nearly 2,000 years. All figures were dark, were sometimes black, and colors were nearly not to discover. This has changed dramatically. It is now one of the most spectacular results of the conservation work of Ahmed Imam and his team. For this reason, I will show you all the 11 other zodiacal signs and not only Scorpius and 1 or 2 examples. Next come Leo. And what we have, Cancer, Gemini, Taurus. Then I think my favorite is this one, it's perhaps the most beautiful one, Aries, no? But also Pisces, they are very nice, no? And they have this band, which is, you find this, it is in Greek representations of Pisces, there are sometimes the two fish have this band which is connecting their mouths and sometimes not. Here you have Virgo with the corn ear. No, the corn ear is the brightest star Spica. Then the next one is Libra, the two scales. Scorpius you have already seen. The next one would be Sagittarius. Oh, I did a mistake. But perhaps you prefer this version for Sagittarius. And then coming to Capricorn. And the last one is Aquarius as an Egyptian Nile god. In this slide, you see the first and second arrow with their painted names in the rectangles above their heads. These deities are also attested on other monuments. They are designated as the arrows of a goddess, for example, Nechbet or Bastet, and they are considered as potential dangerous messengers of the goddess. Their role in an astronomical ceiling is unknown. They don't have a fixed position within the zodiac. Daniela Mendel is wondering if they might be representations of meteors or shooting stars, but this is without further material difficult to prove. No? But in any case, the painting is very nice. The same could be said of other figures of this bay, where even the names are not completely conserved. These might be unknown Egyptian constellations, but perhaps also other beings. In the very east of this trave is a representation of the sky goddess Nut. After conservation, 11 circles are to be seen on the body of the goddess. These are left to right the first 11 hours of the day, while the 12th and last hour of the day is swallowed by the goddess. The last trave in the south consists for the largest part of unknown constellations, which are mostly unlike as in the corresponding trave A, unfortunately without painted inscriptions. Some of them have parallels in the still unpublished tomb of Ufaa in Abu Sir, south of Cairo. Depicted are the south and the west wind, as well as several deities who have a relationship with the Nile flood. This photo shows the east part of the trave with 3 deities whose identification was already clear before conservation. The figure at left is Orion, but the rectangle with the ink inscription was a surprise. I would have expected the name Sach Orion, but in fact he is called Jah. This means the one who is crossing. No? Orion looks back to Sotis, you remember, no? And the Egyptian designation of the brightest star of the sky, Sirius. Sotis was considered as the goddess of the new year, which started in the mid of July. Approximately at the same time in Upper Egypt, de facto earlier, but approximately in Lower Egypt, it is more or less the same time. At the same time started the annual Nile flood, and for this reason, she was also venerated as a goddess who is bringing the yearly inundation, which was vital for Egypt. Without the inundation, we would not sit here, no? Since there would be no Egyptology. No? The last goddess at the right with the 2 libation vessels is Antiquities. She was responsible for the drop of the Nile flood, which otherwise would cause considerable damage. No? In conclusion, we have here a depiction of the celestial situation in the night before the New Year, which was a very great festival in all Egyptian temples. Below the 2 barks of Sotis and Anukis is a snake with the head of a vulture. This snake was already identified as the god Pechavel, the one with turned face, who is responsible for the last stadium of the Nile flood. The painted ink inscription makes clear that this early identification was correct. All in all, this figure is part of the general subject New Year and inundation in the eastern part of this bay. In this photo, you see a better overview. Pechaher is above a goddess who is lifting the hieroglyph for the sky, and inside the sky are 10 stars. The goddess is standing to the right of the bark of Orion, and this is the one with the falcon at the bow of the bark. You remember that the stars can stand for the hour of a night, but you may wonder for what reason here are depicted just 10 stars instead of 12 for the 12 hours of the night. The answer is easy. In the night before the New Year, the rising of Orion occurred in the 10th hour of the night. This is nowadays easy to calculate with astronomical internet programs as e.g. stellarium.org. The main deity in Esna, a temple which is dedicated to the male deity, is Chnum. And for that reason, Orion is dedicated in a hymn on architrave F. This is the architrave beside trave F. And this means of course, Sotis is responsible all over Egypt for the starting of the new year. But in Esna, it is more interesting what's going on with Orion. No? And for that reason, we have already the situation of the 10th hour of the night and not of the 12th hour of the night when Sotis is rising. No? This photo shows the depiction of the beautiful wind of the south. A lion with the head of a ram, 4 wings and an ostrich feather on his head. Here you see one of the fantastic figures, a sphinx with the body of a lion, a head of a crocodile and a tail of a cobra. Before his head is one of the rare ink inscriptions, perhaps to read Hezamut, the fierce one of the Mazum. Behind the lion is a standing hippopotamus, perhaps related to similar depictions in the royal tombs of the New Kingdom. All in all, one has the impression that the craftsmen who were working in the southern part of the ceiling were more skilled than those who were charged with the decoration of the northern part, if you remember the beginning of the lecture. I will show you some more of these fantastic figures, unfortunately without inscriptions, which could reveal their names. A snake this is a lion with with the tail of a snake. And here we have a human being with the head of 2 cobras holding 2 black snakes in his hands. And on the last photo, here you see the beautiful wind of the west. Here, there would be not really a need for this inscription, then we would also know without this inscription that it's the beautiful wind of the west. This is, I think, a good moment to end this lecture. I would like to thank all the persons and institutions who were working for this project and supporting this joint Esna project. In fact, these are in every season about 50 people with different tasks, and you see only a small part of them in these photos. And also, even in this photo, they are missing some people. And last but not least, I thank this auditorium of Harvard for their patience.